There's a specific kind of person who says sorry before they even know what they're apologizing for. Sorry, can I just say something? Sorry, is this a bad time? Sorry, I know this is probably stupid. They're not apologizing for a mistake, they're apologizing for taking up space at all. And if that sounds uncomfortably familiar, stick with me, because what's actually happening underneath this habit is more interesting and more fixable than most people realize. You'll notice it most in the moments that don't call for it at all. Someone bumps into you and you apologize. Someone asks you a question you don't know the answer to, and you apologize for not knowing. You walk into a room a second late, and you apologize before anyone's even looked up from their phone. None of these moments required an apology, and yet the word arrives anyway, automatic, almost involuntary, like a verbal twitch wired straight into the nervous system. Let's get one thing straight before we go further. This isn't about politeness. Polite people say "excuse me" when they bump into someone. This is different. This is a reflex that fires before there's even been an offense. Psychologists who study this pattern often trace it back to early environments where a person's presence, their needs, their emotions were treated as an inconvenience. Not necessarily abusive environments, sometimes just busy ones, stressed ones, emotionally unavailable ones. The child learns a quiet lesson early. Take up less room and things go more smoothly. So let's break down what this actually looks like day to day, because it's sneakier than people think. First, the over-apologizing shows up in language before it shows up in behavior. Sorry to bother you, when there's no bother. Sorry for the long message, when the message was 3 sentences. Sorry I'm so much, when the person hasn't done anything except exist in the room. The word becomes a kind of social cushion, padding every interaction so that if it turns out you were unwelcome, you've already softened the blow in advance. Here's the part that catches people off guard. This habit usually isn't conscious. Ask someone who does this why they said sorry, and they'll often pause, genuinely confused, because they didn't register saying it at all. That's because the apology isn't really directed at the other person. It's a kind of preemptive self-protection, a way of managing the anxiety of being perceived before anyone's even had the chance to judge. Now here's where it gets layered. People who apologize for existing often become extremely good at reading rooms. They have to be. If your nervous system has learned that your presence might be unwelcome, you develop a finely tuned radar for tension, mood shifts, the tiniest signs that someone's irritated. That hyper-awareness can look like emotional intelligence from the outside, and in a strange way, it is. It's just emotional intelligence built on a foundation of fear rather than curiosity. Let's pause here for a second, because there's a version of this that's even harder to spot. Some people don't say sorry out loud at all. Instead, they shrink. They take up less physical space, speak more quietly, hold back their opinions, laugh a little too easily at jokes that aren't funny. This is the same root pattern wearing a different costume. The apology isn't verbal anymore, it's behavioral. It's a constant low-level negotiation with the room. Is it okay if I'm here like this? So why does this happen specifically to certain people and not others? A lot of it comes down to what therapists call relational conditioning. Basically, the emotional rules you absorbed about whether your needs were safe to express. If asking for something as a kid was met with annoyance, sighing, or being told you're too sensitive, the nervous system quietly files that away. It doesn't need a single traumatic event. Repetition does the job just fine. 1,000 small moments of feeling like a burden add up to one very large, very quiet belief. I should apologize for needing anything at all. It's worth saying clearly that this isn't about blaming parents or upbringing in some heavy-handed way. Most of the people who raised kids like this weren't trying to teach them they were a burden. They were tired, overwhelmed, juggling their own stress, and a child's nervous system doesn't know the difference between someone who's annoyed at the world and someone who's annoyed at them specifically. It just absorbs the tone in the room and assumes it's personal. That's not a flaw in the child. That's just how young brains are wired to make sense of their environment, by assuming they're at the center of it. Here's a pattern interrupt, because I want you to actually notice this in real time. Think about the last time you said sorry today. Was anyone actually wronged? Or were you just there? Let's talk about what this costs a person over time, because it's not nothing. Chronic over-apologizing quietly erodes how seriously people take you. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because constant softening sends an unconscious signal that you don't fully believe you deserve the space you're occupying. People pick up on that, even subconsciously. It can lead to being overlooked in meetings, dismissed in relationships, or simply not remembered as someone with strong opinions, even when you have plenty. There's also a workplace version of this worth naming separately. Studies on communication patterns in professional settings have found that people who preface ideas with unnecessary qualifiers, sorry, this might be a dumb question, but are statistically less likely to have their ideas credited to them later in a discussion. The idea gets remembered. The person attached to the apology, less so. It's a strange, quiet kind of erasure. One that happens not because the idea was bad, but because the delivery taught the room to discount it before it even landed. There's also an internal cost that's harder to see. Every unnecessary apology is a tiny rehearsal of the belief that you're inconveniencing the world by being in it. Do that enough times a day, every day, for years, and it stops being a habit and starts being an identity. Not on purpose, just from sheer repetition. But here's the part that actually matters, the part most videos like this skip. This pattern is not permanent, and it's not a character flaw. It's a learned response, which means it can be unlearned, slowly, the same way it was learned. Slowly, through repetition, in the opposite direction. The first step isn't to stop apologizing immediately. That almost never works, and usually just creates more anxiety. The first step is noticing. Just noticing, without judgment, when the reflex fires. Oh, there it is again. That's it. That single moment of awareness starts to create a tiny gap between the impulse and the action. And that gap is where change eventually lives. The second step, once noticing becomes automatic, is experimenting with replacement language. Instead of sorry for the long message, try thanks for reading all this. Instead of sorry to bother you, try hey, do you have a second? Same intention, completely different undertone. One assumes you're an imposition. The other assumes you're simply a person talking to another person, which, obviously, you are. And the third step, the slowest and most important one, is starting to test, in small, low-stakes situations, what happens when you take up space without immediately softening it. Say what you think without the disclaimer in front of it. Let a silence sit, instead of filling it with an apology. Notice that the world, in most cases, does not end. There's one more layer worth mentioning, because it changes how you might think about this going forward. The goal here was never to become someone who never apologizes. That would just swap one extreme for another. And genuine accountability matters. Real apologies for real mistakes are part of healthy relationships. The goal is precision. Saving the word sorry for moments that actually call for it, so that when you do say it, it carries weight instead of being background noise. An apology that's used sparingly means something. An apology used as a verbal tick for simply existing in a room means almost nothing, to you or to anyone listening. Here's the truth underneath all of this. People who apologize for existing usually aren't weak. They're often deeply considerate, highly attuned, careful people who learned far too early that their presence needed to be earned. It didn't. It doesn't. And recognizing that pattern, really seeing it clearly for the first time, is often the first step toward finally believing it. If this described you, you don't owe anyone an apology for that either. Let me know in the comments if you caught yourself saying sorry while watching this, because honestly, a lot of people do. And if you know someone who shrinks themselves like this without realizing it, This might be the video that finally gives them language for it.